Today's webinar is titled Effective Communications with Families, presented by Viviana H. St. Louis. She is a KIT Affiliate Coordinator with a degree in Human Services with an emphasis in youth development. She has 13 years of experience working with youth in schools, child development centers, summer camps, overseas and military installations, after-school programs, and mentoring programs. I now present Viviana for you all today.
Good morning and afternoon and evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you this morning, or afternoon or evening. Welcome to my very first webinar. Very excited to be here. So many of us have chosen to work with kids because we're really skilled at working with kids. But we find that in working with kids, we also have to work and become skilled in working with parents, guardians, and other family members, which sometimes can be pretty challenging. As youth and child providers, we find that many of you find yourselves having to relay some really sensitive information to parents and other members. And this can also be a little scary, intimidating, and sometimes overwhelming for some of us. But if you have some good communication tools, you can find this situation stressful. So today's webinar is going to focus on establishing and maintaining effective communication with parents and families. You're going to be expected to identify some of the common blocks of good communication with families and to describe 3 strategies that you can use when communicating sensitive information. Like Emily let you know, you're going to be having some time at the end of the webinar to ask some questions. Effective communication is going to involve more than just informing families of the program's activities and many or some of the mishaps that their child may encounter. It is more than a one-way street. It is going to involve building that trust and respect. With good communication, parents learn to understand how the program works and how you support their child. And you learn to trust that they are doing their best to provide their own family, including the children that you are in your program. Effective communication is also going to be fostering learning. You can learn about a child's home life and family. Let's keep in mind that the parents have the family history, the child's history. Parents can learn about also what's happening during your program hours. In this way, children have and adults have adults and the provider in both worlds supporting their learning as well. So that effective communication is also going to help us accomplish some goals. We are better partners and supporters when we have better communication. There are some blocks that we need to really look out for. When working with families, we do want to avoid practices that put blocks in that communication. At first glance of this list, you might say, well, of course, those can cause problems with communication. I've never blame or judge. But let's think about how easily we might fall into blaming or judging parents. For example, a 4-year-old in my room says, in your room may say the F word. Now, do I think that his parents must say it? Because I sure don't hear at the program, right? So it may be hard to think that, or easy to think that. And I might not say that to them, but I may be thinking it in my head. So is that going to block communication? Well, it sure will. It affects what we say to them and how, how I may be able to approach them. When I tell them that Junior dropped the F-bomb, they may say or think that it's their fault and decide that it's not best to talk about it. Or also parents come with negative experiences. I often, had children transfer to other or come to our program who've had negative experience with other providers as well. Judging can work also in the same way. If mom drops off, their child at 6:30 and doesn't pick them up until nearly 6 p.m., even though she gets off work early, you may think that, how can she leave her child here for so long, or, how irresponsible of her. But when we judge, we don't have a chance to learn that she may be a newly divorced and be doing single parenting for the first time. And you maybe don't know that she has little social support either from family or friends or the extended family, and it's pretty much feeling quite overwhelmed with this. In verbal communication, also, if we interrupt or cut someone off before they have a chance to tell me about their child maybe had a rough morning, then we might find that the same parent doesn't stop to give us that helpful information the next day. With sarcasm, if we say, oh, he's a real sweetheart, all right, when I'm sharing that news that the child bit another child and broke their skin, then I run the risk, needlessly hurting their feelings, and that's really not going to build that trust. Now, giving too much advice also when it's not asked of us, as if we know how to fix everything, or, parents may decide not to discuss those concerns with us. And if we give orders and telling them what to do, they're just going to really probably avoid us altogether. So focusing on oneself is also a block to effective communication. When a parent tells me that, her teen keeps rolling her eyes and saying, don't worry about it, and I tell her, well, she does that to me too, and this one time I just asked her what she did over the weekend. I guess I acted that way when I was 15. So if I'm bringing the topic back to me in this, I fail to hear that the parent may want it to express that, that she fears that her daughter may be depressed. So these are all practices that we want to avoid in order to successfully develop and maintain that effective communication. So from the get-go, we want to make that positive communication part of our program's culture, because it's quite important to establish that effective communication. Sometimes families, when they feel welcome during the intake process, they may become more comfortable in sharing information, especially important information with you, and perhaps more willing to learn about how to support their child during their attendance in your program as well. Are they welcome with a smile, with kind words, with understanding? During the intake process, when I ran programs, I would, if I saw, that a parent may put something that, their child may need some special accommodations or had some questions, I would take the time to call her before and then have her come for a visit to the program and perhaps meet the staff that was going to be working with their child and let the child see the environment. And that will also help the child with the anxiety of coming to a new program and new routine and all that good stuff. So families can sense whether communication is valued in your program. They notice when you provide newsletters, if you send letters home, if you give schedules and menus, maybe reminders. They also notice when you listen to what they say when they bring in their children. They notice if you don't hurry them out the door. They also notice if you share that important information with your teammates. It is also important that we invite families to communicate with us. Do we offer a variety of ways for them to share with us? Do we expect them to write every important detail about their child in their intake application before we actually have established that trust with them, even in the initial meeting? Do we offer meetings when parents have a big concern or only when we have a big concern? So these are things that we can think about. If our communication with a particular parent is not where we like it to be, then we can reflect with these questions and think about how to maybe, or how some strategies or ways to open things up. So after that communication is established, and hopefully it will be a great one, we can maintain that good communication, but it's going to really take some effort. I'll be really honest with you, sometimes we can feel a little alone. It's going to take some repeating and working hard, just like we do with our children in the program. So we have to respond to the parents' concerns in a timely fashion, letting them know that they have been heard, and sometimes set boundaries to clarify our expectations. Even after having explained our procedures, given multiple copies or schedules, we still must be willing to repeat or rephrase and reiterate what we have already said. Why? Well, this is because that in some way people need it. We need that to maintain that communication. We're actually making and being respectful to their needs as well. So what happens if you need to recover from a failure in communication? Well, yeah, that even happens to the rest of us, right? So we all have had failures, and we have to work at making things better for the sake of the child and perhaps our own comfort as well with the relationship with the parent. So, sometimes these failures come from overreactions, oh, you mean you weren't right next to him when he jumped off the playground, or some assumptions. If you're a little late returning from the field trip, oh, your dad won't mind waiting. So also being super busy. Oh, I wanted to tell you something, or I wanted to tell you yesterday, but. So the best way to handle this is going to be direct and kind. You may have had little or no part in creating the problem or the negative experience, excuse me, but you can also be there to help resolve it. You might say, I'm sorry, we've had some miscommunication. I really want us to be able to work together, and can we talk about how we can make things better? And then validate the parents' suggestions. So location. People say that location is important in real estate, but it's really more important, pretty important in effective communication. There are a number of places and ways that we communicate with families. Sometimes for most of us in before and after school or early childhood programs, there's a drop-off and pick-up times that may usually be the most convenient times. Unless, of course, you need to talk to a number of people or use some of communication journals or personal notes like you see here. Or there's, you're going to really try to respect the family's confidentiality. So if you look at the top note that has a visual, there's an unhappy face there. And it reads, Ryan had some toenail clippers that he said he would use to cut someone's body. Well, when I see this note, I wonder if that conversation could have been better or more appropriate in this case, privately. Or, the note below, though, it's written by a parent, that issue is probably something that you might want to address, not in that manner. So the note below, if you look at it, it's written to a parent whose child is in the middle of potty training. So it lets the parents know about her progress. She sat on the potty and made a silly remark about a toilet paper being a gift. So that may be appropriate for that particular situation. We also have communication journals that some of you are probably using in your programs, and it could just go back and forth with the child in their backpack where you state, what went well and what were some of the challenges, and the parent can write back to you and maintain communication that way. So generally, we do use phone calls to communicate more urgent issues. Some parents feel like they only get calls when it's bad news. So if you're working with a child whose parents often get these bad news calls, try to work in some calls to let them know that there are good news that happen. And you might be surprised how this is going to impact your relationship with them, and also how it's going to impact the child's behavior. And I actually had this personally happen to me, where a child, again, that came from another program and had all these negative experiences, and he knew that when he got a phone call home, or he knew that he's going to engage in that situation to really get out of the program. So one day he just had a great day and he helped out and he was helpful, so I called home and I let him know that I was calling home, and he's like, why? And he just had this look, and I said, because I really wanted to let your mom know how well your day went. So the next day he comes back and he says, Ms. Vivi, I appreciate you calling my house. My mom actually gave me a treat. But then, we kind of established that situation, and it turned something that was previously negative into something more positive. So it's something that, it works, and we have to take the time to do sometimes. So when the nature of the issue is very personal, phone calls and scheduled meetings are sometimes the best way to discuss these matters without revealing, of course, confidential information to others, and being sensitive to a family's right to their privacy at the same time. So, but we have to be careful not to shy away from communicating about personal issues that need to be addressed. So let's see. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the sandwich method. Sometimes I like to call it the cookie method, and I like to say that we need to make the cookie even sweeter sometimes. But many of us have learned the sandwich approach. to communicate with parents. And as the visual on the right shows, is the sandwich approach means that you're going to put some meat in your concern. The meat is going to be part of your concern between two positive slices of bread. So you may say something positive and you talk about the issue, and then you end up with another positive comment. This is a good approach, but we have to ask ourselves two questions here about the sandwich we serve. Are the positive comments sincere? So McNuyen has a cute kid. If you're saying this is an example, McNuyen, he's a cute kid and all, but he never listens to instructions and makes so much noise. And hey, it's really nice of you to pick him up early today. So if you think about this example, the positive comments really don't mean much. The second question we have to also ask is if we're direct and clear about the issue. You want to be, you want the positive comments to be sincere, but you don't want to mask the issue around it as well. And you also want to be assertive. You're taking time to communicate, make sure that the message is clear. And there's an example there for you about James. James ate all of his lunch today, and I told him I was proud of him for that. I noticed that he's having a hard time expressing anger appropriately. Today he cursed and pushed another child down when the boy didn't want to play with him. So I think if we work together, we can help him learn a better way to react when he gets mad. What are some suggestions that you have? What has worked in the past? Has this happened with with family? So then you can get the parent to engage in some suggestions. The sandwich approach, again, is good, but it also kind of leaves out half of our job in communication, which is the listening part, which is very, very important. You can be very skilled at talking, but still be very ineffective in communication if you do not know how to actively listen. And this is something that takes time and practice, just like our observation skills, right? I know personally I've had to work on a lot. But if you look at the cartoon, it shows that some of the common things that people may say that can make us wonder if they're really listening. Yeah, cool, or yeah, that's awesome. So to let someone know you really are listening, you may want to acknowledge his or her perspective on the conversation. So I know that it can be difficult when you have so much responsibility, so you're making those statements. You want to rephrase what they have communicated to you. So you think she will respond better if we don't give us many choices, because at home she doesn't get choices very often. So this is that, that give and take conversation where you're sharing these ideas. And you want to also ask open-ended questions. How does that go for you? How can we work together on this? What calms him at home? Has this happened before, and what ideas do you have? And then you can really, you can say, can you please explain how we should respond if he has a seizure, or if he has this happen again? And describe an activity that he likes to be involved in. And then, that's where we come from, because we know their friends, we know what they like to do, we know their favorite color, we know their favorite activities when they are in our program. You also want to be able to summarize and clarify what you have accomplished in the communication. So you can say, I'd like to clarify on this side that we'll give Timmy a truck and a sticker every afternoon if he has played nicely on the playground. That means he's not fighting and not hurting kids. And on your end, you're going to reward him when he brings the sticker home. Is there anything else we didn't cover? So you are, kind of involving them in the whole process. And finally, you may want to offer an opinion carefully. Sometimes when we notice a child has trouble in some form, we want parents to consult a pediatrician perhaps, but we know that some of the behaviors are a result of medical reasons, and this is why we are going to be offering that advice very carefully. We don't want to scare parents or tell them what diagnosis they should look for. Instead, we can give them that careful opinion. Hey, I've noticed that Tara doesn't seem to hear me when I call her name. I think it will be good if you talk to her pediatrician about it. So there are some goals. I can't pretend that all parents are going to be easy to work with, right? I lose all credibility with you all right now. So I too have interacted with parents who argued that maybe their child, their gifted child was not being challenged, and with parents who refuse maybe to believe that their teenager would ever try to bring alcohol on a field trip, or parents who arrive late, for most pickup times. So it is not easy. But one of the things that I've come to terms with is that sometimes we always made working with parents easier for me, or something that made working with parents easier with me was really remembering that just because someone is a parent doesn't mean that they have it all figured out already. So we usually give kids lots of chances, and we talk to them, we involve them in the situation. So because we know that they're growing and developing and learning, well, sometimes adults need those chances, and for the same reason, sometimes we have to think that parents are kids too. So, but even though when we are working with parents, we may not be on the same page as we are, and those who have it all figured out, we can still find some common goals to work with them. Usually a program has goals that focus on having a well-run program, safety, learning, peer relationships. You probably can add more to this list that you see here on our slide. It usually family has those goals that focus on their child having good care during parent work hours and getting rest, and also safety, and then learning. So as you can see, we have some similarities there. Yes, some of our basic goals are overlapping with those of parents and families. So when we're not seeing eye to eye, we should really come back to talk about these common goals. That we both want their child to be successful in our program, to be successful in life. So we need that. We need to make a plan together to help him or her learn that running in a parking lot is not safe. So we have those goals that we can work on together. So body language is going to matter. We talked about a lot, talking to parents about listening and finding common goals. And the chart on the right helps us see that it's not just our words that are going to matter, but nonverbal communication, otherwise known as body language, does a lot to get a message across. So if you ever looked at a friend with your nicest smile, and you lean closer to them and tell them, what an ugly sweater you're wearing. So you can imagine that they're going to say, oh, they may say, why, thank you, but then before they realize what you said. So no, I'm not encouraging you to do this, but to think just about what your own body language is communicating when you're interacting with with parents. Are you in the standoff position? It really can impact how seriously your message can come across. I will admit that I have been considered. I've also considered what color, or how it's going to affect my message. So the setting. Is it a place where the parent's going to be comfortable? Is it too cold? Is it too noisy? Is there a lot going on? So it's going to all be part of that experience that you're going to create to relay a message to a family or a parent. So as you become aware of the use of your own body language, you really should be responsive to others' body language as well. So if someone has their arms crossed and appears defensive, can you say something, reassuring them that they're more at ease, or say, I've been looking forward to speaking to you all day. Also if the parent verbally tells you that they understand what you've said, but their body language has told you something else, and maybe they're checking their text messages or searching for their keys at the same time, that you might want to be ready to repeat that message. You might offer, I know you have a lot going on right now, and would it be helpful if I write this down for you? So that's some of the things that you can do. So you're going to take a moment now to think about communication that you have with the families in your program. So think about the families with whom you have really effective communication, how they feel, do they feel comfortable talking to you, giving you information, and also receiving that information, and what difference this makes in your program, in the child when they are with you. So if you're having this really great communications, congratulations on your effective communication skills. So now really think about a family with whom communication is not so great. So remembering how strategies that we have discussed today, decide on what strategies you can use to strengthen that communication. Will your efforts involve calling perhaps a meeting and acknowledging that you like to improve your communication, or is it going to involve better planning on where communication takes place? Will it be, the sandwich method or the sweet cookie method that I told you about? Where sometimes we just really have to find all these, great other things, and perhaps that may not, really looking into the child to be able to relate appropriate, direct, and kind information to their parents. Is it going to be finding common goals, or rethinking your body language? And so what do you think will improve communication with this particular family? So write down those 3 communication strategies that we will use. And while you're doing that, so as we are into the near of our webinar, so I'd like to remind you that with the strategies you identify that they're so important when we do have effective communication with families, because we are really are striving to build that trust and respect between providers and the families that we serve. So absolutely, trust and respect is a must. Kids pick up on this, and it affects their sense of security as well. So we expand on those opportunities for learning, mutual learning from with families, and that learning on part of children and adults as well. So we also hope everyone sets goals to accomplish them, and goals are most easily accomplished when they are supported by a team of folks who effectively communicate with each other. So thank you.